Swami, hey, please accept
Hari,
my humble obeisances.
Hari, Hari.
First to Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Somehow, Sarvatma, you somehow don't look like Divyadasi.
It's just you don't have the eyes to see it. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena.
I see. I knew it was something.
If you love me, you would see me as I am.
Right.
My computer is the operating system is DOS, and it has a hand crank on the side, so I have to use my wife's computer.
Uh-huh.
That's why.
Well, at least it's a hand crank and not a foot pedal.
It actually smokes when you turn it on. There's a bare-chested Armenian guy sitting on a stationary bike right outside, trying to give some electricity to it. Sometimes it slows down for some reason.
Indeed.
Well, for those who are not familiar with Krishna-Ksetra Maharaj, he joined many centuries ago.
Yeah.
He's very old, very old.
Oh yeah, dinosaur.
Yes, yeah. He was an adult when the Kumaras were around. He actually performed an incredible service for Srila Prabhupada and the movement. He was a brahmachari for who knows how long, 40 years maybe, and then took sannyas. I was there, and Goloka Dham, Germany, has a lot of very nice disciples that I met, quite a few of them. He used to, how could he say, is there a synonym for smuggle? He used to smuggle books into East Germany when it was at the risk of one's own life. He has since pursued a career in academia just to teach Krishna consciousness, not the death men's curve, as some might have experienced. That
Death men's curve.
Yes, he came back with renewed vigor and enthusiasm, and has written numerous books. He's written papers, attended conferences, and convinced quite a few people about the maturity and validity, both scientific and academic, of Krishna consciousness. So he's going to talk to us today. I think you're going to hit on the verse and then wander about in your own, let's say, social, historical, philosophical pasture.
Okay. Yeah, social pasture, a social pasture. Sounds good. Philosophical pasture. Yes, we may end up out on the pasture.
Well, we're farmers. We're used to this.
One or another pasture, we may end up.
That's the soapbox, the forum, the mic is yours.
Okay, so let's chant some pranati, shall we? Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandhu, Jagatpate, Gopesha, Gopika, Kanta, Radha, Kanta, Namostute, Tapta Kanchana, Gaurangi, Radhe, Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanusute Devi, Pranamami, Hari Priya, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. As I understand, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't remember. Do you show the verse? Or do I take it from my source?
We don't. You just read the verse.
Okay, I will then have to, what will I have to do? I'll have to shift over here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraya Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, verse number 50. This is continuing Narada Muni's discussion with the king Prachina Barhishat, sometimes called Prachina Barhi, in which he's describing in an extended allegory, I would say within an analogy within an allegory. In any case, he's talking about the different gates of the body, gates of the city body, and I should perhaps say, or maybe not, where I'm speaking from. I'm speaking from outside Oxford on a rather cold, drizzly Sunday, May 1st, midday. So the verse goes like this: Pitrihur nripapur yadvar dakshinena puranjana Rashtrang dakshina panchalam yati shrutadarandita. Pitrihu, of the name Pitrihu, Nripa, O king, Purya, of the city, Dva, gate, Dakshinena, on the southern side, Puranjana, King Puranjana, Rashtram, country, Dakshina, southern, Panchalam, of the name Panchala, Yati, used to go, Shutadara Anvitaha, along with his friend Shutadara. The southern gate of the city was known as Pitrihu, and through that gate, King Puranjana used to visit the city named Dakshina Panchala, accompanied by his friend Shutadara. Short purport by Srila Prabhupada: the right ear is used for karma kandiya, or fruitive activities. As long as one is attached to the enjoyment of material resources, he hears from the right ear and uses the five senses to elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, like Pitriloka. Consequently, the right ear is here described as the Pitrihu gate. Pitrihu. So you can surprise all your friends and neighbors by telling them that the way to heaven is through the Pitrihu gate. If you want to make them wonder if you're okay or not. But you can say you're simply quoting from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Mukam karotu vachalam pangum langayate girim yad kripa tamaham vande shigurum dinataranam. Narada, in his usual role of teaching Bhakti Yoga, Krishna Consciousness, is speaking to a king with the intention of drawing him away from his preoccupations, his material preoccupations, in particular his violence, his killing of animals in sacrifice, which the king is doing, thinking that he is being very pious. Excuse me. And for this purpose, he is giving this extended allegory of King Puranjan in his city, we might want to say citadel of what represents the body, the physical body. King Puranjana is every man. He represents all of us, every man, every woman. And his situation represents the situation of all of us in our material bodies. And specifically in this part, this section, describing the city as having 9 gates, taking the body as having gates, which give us access to the external world. And we might say which put us in a condition of duality, because we have a sense of inside and outside of our bodies. And we have the sense of going out. Actually, this notion of the king exiting from the various gates is interesting from a traditional Indian, perhaps it's especially the Nyaya tradition, I'm not 100% sure, but traditional Indian epistemology. Actually, I think Srila Jiva Goswami may refer to this. There's the idea that the senses are not simply receiving impression, but that, for example, the the seeing activity is a kind of going out from the eyes to the object that we see and coming back. That's quite different from our Western ideas of perception. And it suggests a kind of active involvement more than a passive reception. But in any case, it's, as I mentioned a bit earlier, what we're getting is an allegory, and within the allegory, we're getting a kind of extended analogy, the analogy of the city with the body, or body with city, extending by speaking of gates, and so on. This is one sort of analogy for understanding what bodies are like, physical bodies. Another one we get in Vedic literature, broadly speaking, Vedic, also Vedic in the sense of Upanishads. Another analogy is a body as chariot. And of course, chariots are about moving and transport and about directing. So horses, pulling chariot, driver of chariot, controlling horses with reins. So we get all the different principles, the body, the mind, the intelligence, the senses, the horses being like the senses, they need to be controlled and to get to the destination. So like that, there's different analogies, ways of understanding what is, kind of, in a sense, difficult to comprehend. Our physical bodies, what to speak of our subtle bodies. We have trouble from day one after we're born. We struggle with our bodies and being quite clueless what to do with them other than to cry and to ingest, to take milk from our mothers and so on. And yeah, throughout our lives, what do we do with these bodies? We move them around the planet. We move them around our rooms, our houses. We shuffle them around various places and in relation to other bodies and other beings. And we are so much preoccupied just with these bodies, despite the fact that actually we're not these bodies. This is the proverbial monkey wrench in the works, or as they say here in England, the spanner in the works. That Prabhupada spoke out so boldly that you are not this body. We are not this body. All right, we're not the body, but we have them. What to do with them? We can engage them in so many different ways, but essentially there are two options. One is we can engage them for becoming further tied and bound and strangled by material energy, or we can use them to become free from this entanglement and can we say enstranglement? No, that's a new word. And so what we're getting in the present verse is simply a descriptive point that we don't usually think of one ear having a certain function and the other ear having another function, but Narada Muni tells us that's how it is, so who can argue against it? That the right ear is for hearing about material life, essentially, about how to get to other places which are also material places. And as will be described in the next verse, which we don't dare to move on to because probably someone else is scheduled to speak on that tomorrow. So stay tuned for that discussion, because that will be about the liberating function of the left ear. Now, I know at this point already somebody's going to be asking, so which ear is the proper ear to hear Gayatri in when one is getting Gayatri initiation? Well, if I had to make a choice based on what Narada Muni says, I would say it's the left ear. But the sort of common sense side of me says, actually, when you hear in one ear, you're probably also hearing in the other ear, unless you have a way of plugging off one ear and opening the other. Okay, this trivial point having been dealt with, maybe we can progress from there. I think one way to think about the Bhagavatam as a whole is it's an expansion, commentary, an expanded commentary on Bhagavad Gita. One can also, I've found, one way of appreciating a kind of structural aspect of the Bhagavatam itself. I've often said that it works like a kind of spiral where you start in Canto 1 and you spiral around through the cantos. Each turn around, you are more or less returning to territory you've already encountered in earlier portions. But you're not going in circles, you're going in an upward spiral. And this is not just an upward spiral, but it's a kind of expanding spiral. And what do I mean by that? What I mean to say is that we could look, for example, at the beginning of Canto 2, where Srila Shukadeva Goswami essentially begins the Bhagavatam, the first canto being an introduction, a prelude, sort of setting the scene. And then Shukadeva Goswami begins Bhagavatam proper with the first chapter of Canto 2. And what does he talk about in the beginning of this chapter? He talks about the materialist mentality, nidraya hriyate naktam vyavayana chavavayaha diva charte hayarajan kutumba varanenava. He tells us what the materialistic family person does, spending his nights in sleeping and sexual intercourse. Vyavaya means literally sexual intercourse, one of its meanings. And what does he do during the day? Arte haya, arta I haya. He's busy maintaining the situation for his safety and enjoyment. And then the next verse elaborates, Dehapatra what is it? deha patradineshu balisheshu dvishats. No, I'm getting things mixed up. He tells what the materialist does with his situation so that he can think that he's being protected by Atma-Shanyeshva Satsvapi, that all of his soldiers are going to protect him. What are the soldiers? Dehapatya kalatradishu Atma-Shanyeshva Satsvapi. His body, first of all, then his wife and his children. Atma-Shanyeshu, the soldiers of the self, that they're going to protect him. He thinks that's what's going to happen, and at the same time, he sees that it's not going to happen. So essentially, it's telling, Shukadeva Goswami there is telling a story which is the common story of the conditioned souls, the human race in general, and it's a pathetic story. Now, the point I wanted to make is then this short description that Shukadeva Goswami is making gets expanded. It'll be expanded by Kapila Dev in the third canto. It'll get expanded further in this section we're reading now, expanded by Narada. It's essentially the same story. It's the same pathetic story. And it's pathetic, and it's going to get also quite, we can say, pathetically humorous. When Puranjana meets this unknown or unnamed woman who becomes his queen, Puranjani, she's referred to at some time. The humor comes when we read that whatever she does, he also does. When she smiles, he smiles. When she sits, he sits. When she walks, he walks. Everything. he's the perfect mirror image of his wife, and this is a cause for amusement as we read it, and this points to the fact that there are different kinds of humor. One of them is laughing at another, and there's another kind of humor which is laughing with someone. And it's the laughing at which we are urged to do as we hear the story of Puranjana, the pathetic story of Puranjana. And at the same time, as we laugh at him, we have to hold up the mirror. This is what Narada is suggesting. Hold up the mirror and see how much we are implicated in all of this. All of which is, of course, to urge us to turn our attention and specifically our hearing capacity to better use. And already in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shutasya cha. First, he says there's a kind of indifference, nirveda, which comes for a person who is practiced in yoga, specifically buddhi yoga. One becomes indifferent, shrotavya, to what is to be heard. This is the gerundive form, shrotavya. Shruta is what is heard. So anything that's been heard, anything that is to be heard. one becomes indifferent to it. Having come out of the moha kalila, the bramble bush of bewilderment, which is this material existence. And when we come out of the bramble bush of this bewilderment and become indifferent to whatever's heard, whatever might be heard in this material world, then what do we do with our ears, whether the left ear or the right ear? Well, that's already been told earlier in the previous canto, in the third canto, by Srila Kapila Deva, when he says, Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana kata tat joshana asvapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. Interesting, I find here, we all know this verse about the value of associating with devotees, with sat, with the good folks, with the spiritual folks. Satam prasangan mama virya samvida, who are aware of, who are knowers of the virya, the heroism, of the Lord. Mama samvida, Kapila says, my glory, my heroism. Bhavanti rit karna rasayana kata. They're engaged in the kata, which is a rasayana, a place of rasa, of nectar, of relishability, for hrit, for the heart, and the ears. That's one way of translating. It would be called a dvandva samasa. Samasa means compound. Dvandva means dual. So it's giving a series. There's hrit, there's the heart, and there's karna, the ears. But the way these Sanskrit samasas work is they often give other possibilities. So this could be read in a different way as a tat purusha compound, which means that you could say hrit karna rasayana kata, the stories, the kata, the speaking, which is relishable for the heart ears, for the ears of the heart. In other words, it's more about the listening of the heart rather than the external hearing or listening of our external, our physical ears. So that's really what devotees are interested in. And then if we jump forward in the Bhagavatam to the example of King Ambarish, he's a prime example of doing this, not just hearing, but all of his other senses, starting with the mind. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayo vachangsi, etc. Right when I want to quote a verse, it slips my mind. Shrutim chakara achyuta satkatodaye is the line that we want as far as hearing goes. His ears, what does he do with his ears? Achyuta satkata, he hears about the satkata of Achyuta. So that's Ambarish Maharaj. Again, it's a kind of expansion, if you like. We could take this idea of hearing one step further and this takes us into the 10th canto. And let's see if I have it here. Yes. This comes to the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the very end of the 5 chapters describing the Rasa Lila, in which Shukadev Goswami wants to apparently clarify any doubt about the value of hearing Rasa Lila when he says, Vikriditam Vrajavadubhir idam cha Vishnu Shradhanvito Nusrinuyat Atavarna Yetyaha Bhaktim Parang Bhagavati Pratilabhya Kamang Hrit Rogam Ashvapahinot Yachirena Dira. Anyone, this is a Palashruti verse, a verse that's telling the fruit, the result of hearing. So he says, anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus, he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. So then going back to King Prachinavarhishat, we may well want to say this is his problem. He has a disease of the heart, Hrit Rogam, which is getting cured with the help of Narada Muni. And then Shukadev Goswami is telling us that Anusrinuyat, hearing, and Varnayet, by describing this Leela in particular, the Rasa Leela of Krishna with his eternal gopi associates, can cure, can give us this is the medicine that's going to solve the disease of the heart. Right, so that's a quick sketch and a bit of a run over some elements of the Bhagavatam, how the Bhagavatam expands on this subject of what to do with the ears. King Puranjan doesn't seem to know what to do with his ears or his eyes or his nose, his 2 nostrils, and so on. And this is making for a story of somewhat comedic pathos or pathetic comedy, from which the serious readers of Bhagavatam want to then move on to hearing the glories of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Those are a few comments that come to my mind. So perhaps I should stop there and see if there's a further comment from any of you listening. And in case not, we could move on to other pastures as you suggested, Sarvagna.
I do have a comment or more like a question. I would like to know, because you presented the Bhagavatam as a cautionary tale. So apparently the allegory and analogy of King Prachinavarhishat or Puranjana, the common every man, is actually our story. That we read the Bhagavatam as is somewhat of a something for us to reflect that our life is the pathetic life that gets involved into all sorts of things that are absolutely unnecessary in order to get back to our real life. So is the Bhagavatam just a cautionary tale expanded and commented on for us to actually finally get the point? Just like Narada couldn't tell the story directly to to Prachina Barisha. That's why he said, Raja, Rajan, once there was a king, oh king. So is the Bhagavatam.
There was a king, oh king.
Right. No, it was you, but I can't tell you that. So it's
Yeah.
the Bhagavatam talking to us in the same way. Wake up, fool. This is you. This is your pathetic life. And poor Markandeya Rishi that had to go through the ocean of devastation at the very end of a Bhagavatam just to figure out that, he wasn't the body. Are we experiencing pretty much every step as the Bhagavatam is told?
Well, certainly cautionary tailness is there in the Bhagavatam, but of course, fortunately, that's not all that the Bhagavatam is. As one scholar has written, he wrote a book, scholar devotee, I would say. He wrote a book called Tales for the Dying, with a subtitle, The Death Narratives of the Bhagavata Purana, in which he gives a kind of literary analysis of the Bhagavatam. And yeah, he's focusing on the death narratives. There's lots of death narratives in the Bhagavatam. And some of those death narratives are about glorious, heroic, and yogic and devotional deaths. And some of them are about pathetic, sad story, unfortunate sorts of deaths. And clearly the ones that are in the second category are meant to evoke in us a feeling, gosh, I don't want to be one of those. But the positive alternative is given also, the glorious deaths. The central one being that of Maharaj Parikshit, who suddenly isn't there anymore in the 12th canto. He takes permission from Shugade Goswami, and then he proceeds to exit his body in a yogic sort of way before the snake bird can come, or just before the snake bird comes and bites him. Yeah. So yeah, both are there. And then there's one sort of in between. There's the story of Ajamila, right? Which is a story of a pathetic death which becomes glorious. By no particular qualification of Ajamila, except that he has a son who happens to have the right name. So there's some something humorous there as well, sort of despite himself. He has a glorious death. Anyway.
But that is hardly fortuitous, because he was a Brahmin. He was a devotee before he became a debauchee, and so we can say that any instance where good fortune appears as if it was chance or luck is simply remnants of some kind of sukriti.
Yeah, no, that's certainly the case. Yes, he was on a long sort of most of his lifetime deviation, and then he gets pulled back at the last minute. And it's explained by acharyas that the fact that he was calling his son all those years, or the few years, that son was quite young, but he was calling him, so he was benefiting all the time he was calling his son Narayana. Yeah. Indeed.
There is a question from Queenie. Please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your class. I have a question. When you were saying that when we hear something, it's actually the heart is hearing and not the actual function, like not that we hear through the ears, but we actually hear from the heart. And so I wonder if we can trust the vibration of the heart. Like, is there such a thing that when you hear from more advanced devotees, then your heart you can feel that vibration in your heart, and, and can we trust that vibration in the heart?
Interesting. Yes, thank you. It's Prabhupada would many times say that just hearing the sound of the devotees, even we don't understand what they say, is beneficial, is purifying. So, and when I was saying Hrit Karna can be understood that way as the ears of the heart ears, I meant specifically this is the ears of hearing spiritual sound. So we can say that when there's devotional spiritual sound, the ears of the heart open up to hear that. So that could be one way of understanding. But it raises, of course, question, how does one go from the material hearing to the spiritual hearing? And the short answer, aside from the whole process of sadhana bhakti, the short answer is hearing from devotees. And that's, I think, the core point in that verse of Kapila Deva, satam prasangan mama virya samvido. Having prasanga. Sangha means association. Prasanga means something like intense association or thorough, solid, complete, something like that. Yeah. Is that okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. I was wondering more in terms of when you listen to different devotees, because I've been experiencing some doubt in bhakti, and I've been to share very frankly that just have some doubt with hearings from different devotees and different about different topics in ISKCON and Krishna Consciousness. And so do you have any advice? How can we discriminate, or how can we hear and be able to discriminate? And ISKCON is the big world, and so I started having
all these different devotees are telling so many different things, and some of it's kind of pretty far out. Like, am I supposed to really believe that? And so
that points to the earlier question that I asked: can we trust the vibration of the heart? That sometimes when some certain devotees say certain thing, and you can feel the vibration of the heart sort of stronger than the others, then can we actually trust that vibration in the heart? Or maybe it's some sort of like exhaustive experience or something. You shouldn't really take that into consideration.
Well, it's two things. We're not supposed to just throw our discrimination, our intelligence out the window. Several times in the Gita, Krishna speaks of buddhi yoga, and buddhi, usually translated as intelligence, can also just mean reason or discrimination. Sometimes Prabhupada says buddhi yoga is bhakti yoga, but in any case, we use our intelligence, and we also are enjoined to be submissive, to surrender, to accept, and so on. So there's a kind of, seems like a paradox there. But I always find helpful Narottam Das Thakur's little formula in one of his songs, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya, Hridaye or Chittete Koriya Aikya, Satatam Bhajibo Bhashibo Prema Maje. He kind of prays, may the words of the sadhus, the Shastra, and the Guru become what he calls an Aikya. The word Aikya is from the word Eka, and Eka means one, not two, not three, but one. Aikya. So Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya, the words Vakya, or the statements, Hridaye Koriya Aikya, having become, having made an Aikya, a singularity, a single clear sense of my, I would say integrated. May all this become integrated for me to be, to have my own integrity. So integrated, and you know this word integrity. We all need to develop and preserve and live by our own integrity. And so there's on an important level, there is our individuality. We have our individual relation with Krishna, which is not quite the same as anyone else's relationship. And so certain things that we hear may resonate with us, and certain things may not resonate with us, and that's okay. And we can just sort of note, oh, that doesn't really resonate with me. Okay, maybe someday it will, from a different, maybe I'll get a different perspective, a different light on what this person said. But for now, let me just appreciate that this person, this devotee, is speaking from his or her heart, hopefully. And you can sort of leave it at that. Oh, this person, this devotee has a strong conviction in this regard. I'm not so convinced, but okay, anyway, it's interesting. Here is someone with a strong conviction. That's wonderful. So Narottam says, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Hridaye Koriya Aikya or Chittete Koriya Aikya Satatam Bhashivo Prema Maje. In this way, then I will always be floating within prema, within the sea of prema, something like that. In other words, that becomes a kind of way of checking. Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is scientific. What does that mean? Well, there's a test. If I hear something and it's giving me some light in the direction of Krishna prema, then that's good. It's good medicine for me. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna. I see Madhu Prajna in the form of the cows. I don't know if the cows are listening to all of this or not, but
They do.
They're listening, huh?
They're an integral part, and usually the name of the particular video that you see is the cow right in front. They always change. Every day there is a different cow that gets first row.
Okay, so the cow that we're seeing is Madhu Prajna.
I believe so. Yes, I haven't been here long enough to identify all of them.
Right.
All 80 cows, but yes.
Yeah, no. Very nice. Well, I guess it's a bit late to start on that subject, isn't it?
Yes. So how about a rain check?
A rain check. This is okay.
You have to really trust somebody to accept a rain check. So would you come back and talk about cows and
yeah, we can do that. Okay. Now I'm going to ask an embarrassing question. How far did you get in my book yourself?
Not very far.
Okay, so can we make that your homework until the next time, and then you'll have better, you can kind of interview me?
Sure, we can do that. We can.
Or did my book end up in the bottom of your storage trailer?
Oh, don't worry. It's not far enough. Even if it is there. No, I'll get back to it, and
okay,
we can talk about it.
What you can also do for others, in case someone might be interested, is send them the link to download my book. As you know, it's open access.
Why don't you type it on the chat so everybody can get it right away?
Okay, I'll get it in a minute. It's here.
So please, devotees, take a look at the chat right now when you see the link appear, and copy it, because eventually the Zoom session will expire and you won't have access anymore. So just go to the chat and copy and paste and put it somewhere else.
And don't be confused by the name of the author of the book. That's my civil name. Yeah.
I think you're pretty civil as a devotee too.
I try to be. Yeah.
So anybody else has a burning question, or
a burning question, or a reigning question?
Yes, any type of question or comment you may.
It stopped raining here in Oxford, so.
Well, there are more cows showing up in the Vrajadamananda Das. Is
Vrajadamananda showing? That's because he is in another cow loka, which is north of here, northeast, near Leicester. This is, he's giving us a show. Yeah, this is the Ahimsa Milk Project of Sitaram. And, they have 1,000 people on their waiting list to become members in order to get Ahimsa milk.
Wow. Well, here we hardly get any dairy, because all the milk is snatched away by many customers.
Yeah.
We even freeze some of the milk and ship it via American Airlines to California.
Yeah.
So we just take vegan stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's
We go get some yogurt and other products.
when I was locked down at the farm, the ISKCON farm in northern Maharashtra.
Right.
At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I was locked down for 10 weeks. They have about 200 cows there. Usually around 30, 35 cows were giving milk. These are gear cows. And so I was getting fresh milk, and yogurt, and buttermilk every day. It was quite something.
That is a luxury.
Yeah.
Well, we won't take any more of your time. It's been enlightening and enlivening to hear you again. And
well, it's been my pleasure.
From the bottom of our hearts, as it is our customary farewell, I'm going to ask the devotees to please turn on their videos and unmute themselves and express their appreciation in person, in situ. So thank you in my name and everybody else's name. Please.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Jai, Haribol.
Hare Hare.
Jai Maharaj.
Hare
Very good.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, devotees, for attending. The next program will be on the 8th, which is a Sunday, and is Mother's Day. Very same link. And we're going to have Rukmini Walker, also known as Urban Devi, talking. She's going to give Bhagavatam class, and I'm sure she will address other topics as well. So that's the same link on the 8th of May at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time plus daylight savings. Thank you very much for listening, and see you very soon. Hare Krishna.